Controlled opposition is how entrenched, corrupt power manages to manipulate the masses for the long haul. Give them the illusion that there happens to be some person, or better yet, a group, speaking for you, your particular viewpoint. And as long as they're there, you don't have to do it yourself. There's this group here, and, well, everyone in the society's viewpoint is represented. Never mind the fact that nothing changes. You see, you got to understand, this is a trick that goes all the way back to the Babylonians. This one is well before the Romans. And we still see it today. Ava DuVernay is a fan of Harvey Weinstein. No, I'm serious. She is. Not because I say so, but because she said so. In a now deleted Twitter tweet from 2012, Agent DuVernay was heaping gushing praise on the most notorious sexual predator of the 21st century. She was clearly campaigning for some attention. She was clout chasing like crazy and wasn't too bashful about how she went about it. Watching Harvey Weinstein sit in for Piers Morgan and interviewing Clinton. I've heard all the Harvey stories over the years, but still a fan. Did you get that? See, that's not Professor Black Truth saying that. That's Ava DuVernay who wrote that. People in Hollywood have known about Harvey Weinstein's raping, pillaging, and plundering of women for decades, and none of these people in Hollywood said a word. In fact, these people lionized him and praised him as a genius and his generosity, and oh, this man, he loves really good movies. What a lover of the arts. Who has done more to promote the arts than Harvey Weinstein? At least that's what they were saying in Tinseltown. Agent DuVernay herself wrote that she knew all the Weinstein stories. She didn't say, well, I heard a story about him, but still a fan. She didn't say, I've heard a couple of stories, but still a fan. In fact, she didn't even say, I've heard some stories. She said she had heard them all. And then, without skipping a beat in the very same sentence, she said she's still a fan. Now, what kind of mentality, what kind of mindset do you have to have where you got a guy who is famous for raping and sexually assaulting women, and Agent DuVernay acknowledges that? Yeah, I've heard it. Still a fan. Now, when I posted this earlier today on my Twitter page and in the community port tab on my YouTube channel, you had some of the slow coast, some of the people who, obviously, these are the lurkers and trolls who there's no act of white supremacy and there's no act of butter biscuit bootlickery that these clowns won't excuse. And they tried to say, well, she didn't say this recently. Why, she wrote that in 2012. That makes it even worse. Because 2012, that was 3 years before the NYPD sting operation against him. 5 years before Ronan Farrow's New Yorker piece, which busted the Weinstein scandal wide open. DuVernay, by her own admission, knew all about Weinstein's raping and preying on women, and she didn't care. And just in case you think, oh, well, maybe she misspoke, man, she had more to say about Harvey Weinstein, a lot more. I think Harvey Weinstein should replace Piers Morgan. Okay, that's not fair. I've never watched Piers Morgan. Man, this is a sexual predator who she acknowledges she knows all about the violations of women that he's carried out, but she's still a fan. And she goes so far as to say, I think he should replace Piers Morgan. So in other words, as far as she's concerned, she loves her some Harvey Weinstein. I mean, this is some first-rate mammying going on here. She is a cheerleader for a man who she acknowledges that she knows is a sexual predator. I think Harvey Weinstein should replace Piers Morgan. Yeah, because, hey, who wouldn't want to see a sexual predator on television 5 days a week? Agent DuVernay would. And then she goes to say, oh, that's not fair. I've never watched Piers Morgan. To me, what that seems to be saying is you put Harvey Weinstein on and maybe Ava DuVernay will actually watch the show. That's what she's implying. She's implying, well, if Harvey Weinstein was hosting, I would watch a lot more often because I'm not watching Piers Morgan. So Harvey Weinstein needs to be on there because then I'd watch the show. This is Agent DuVernay saying this mess. This ain't Professor Black Truth saying it. This is Agent DuVernay saying that. And she just went on and on and on, post after post after post, about a man who she started off by acknowledging, yeah, I know he's a sexual predator, so what? But this is the same woman who was indignant at the accusations against R. Kelly, and she was the one who did the most to push that hashtag mute R. Kelly. And by the way, just in case you're not aware, it's bad enough that Agent DuVernay has been out here deciding to help run interference and distraction for R. Kelly, but she has a long history of trying to figure out how she can get attention off of Harvey Weinstein and onto black men. I'm sure we're all familiar with the Leaving Neverland fiction show that HBO paid for. And you have Agent DuVernay, who was helping back last year to help spread the word about it. She wanted people to know about it. Vulture, the appropriately named website, they decided that they were going to do a hit piece on Michael Jackson. Because, you know, when a guy's dead, that's the best time to slander him. The name of the article, No One Deserves as Much Power as Michael Jackson Had. They chose that title for a reason. Because everybody who's familiar with black people, especially white supremacists like the white media, they're familiar with the story about Malcolm X. You had one of the Muslims who had been brutally beaten by the police. Malcolm gathered the fruits of Islam outside of the hospital. And the police were terrified that the brothers were going to turn things up. And then what happened was when Malcolm was reassured that the man was cared for and that he was going to be okay, the police were scared, like, well, what's going to happen? You know, you can't control this crowd. And without saying a word, all Malcolm did was simply point his finger and the fruits of Islam dispersed. Didn't have to say a word. See, if he was white, he would have been having to scream, order commands, all that stuff. Malcolm commanded that level of respect. And it's a true story when you had that police commander who said that's too much power for one man to have. So when Vulture has a headline like this, no one deserves as much power as Michael Jackson had, their choice of words was deliberate. As was Agent DuVernay's support for it. Look what the heck this skank does. She decides, well, let me go ahead and quote from Vulture. It's hard to explain the relationship between superstars of the 80s and their fans to people who weren't alive or old enough to remember the decade. She doesn't say that it's a hit piece. She says strong piece. On the doc I'm dreading to watch. Yeah, I can tell you're dreading to watch it because you're sitting here panting with anticipation. When you had people who were calling her out and saying, why are you supporting the two frauds, Wade and James, who unjustly accused Michael Jackson, and they tell her you need to educate yourself. She says, your harassment of me will never change my mind. Ah, so she don't seem to be dreading watching this documentary anymore, does she? Badger me, I block you. Invade my timeline, I literally smile and block you. Now, does this sound like somebody who's trying to find the truth, or does it sound like somebody who is a feckless shill for the white media? Now, you would think that when Taj Jackson, Michael Jackson's nephew, decided to speak up, when he confronted Agent DuVernay, you would think that she would listen to reason because you got one of Michael Jackson's family members here talking to her. Taj Jackson tells her, you shouldn't be harassed, but I am sincerely asking what will or could change your mind, or at least for you to consider another perspective. I know you are a champion for black, human, and civil rights, yet for some reason you don't see us. Does my family not count? Taj Jackson, black folks don't count to Agent DuVernay. She's campaigning for a butter biscuit plate from white supremacy. But Michael Jackson's own nephew, the son of Tito Jackson, that's who Taj Jackson is, He's coming to Agent Duvernay telling her you need to pump your brakes. You're wrong about this. Now, you would think at the very least she'd be like, well, hell, if Michael Jackson's family members are hitting me up, maybe I need to check this. Nah, not Agent Duvernay, because this was not about truth. This was about the fact that she's an agent of white supremacy doing whatever it takes to get them butter biscuits. And by the way, there were other people, a lot of the folks who understand exactly the lies that have been told about Michael Jackson, they were pointing out that there was no point in speaking to Agent Duvernay. Obviously, she was trying to make herself as useful to the powers that be as possible. But I'm doing this because I want you to understand this is who and what Ava DuVernay is. So when you see her just gushing over degenerate swine like Harvey Weinstein, the most notorious sexual predator of the 21st century, just understand, this is a woman who's made a career out of trashing black men. So while Harvey Weinstein's impending legal problems were building last year, when the white media was trying to figure out, hey, Harvey's about to have his arraignment, there's some more Harvey news coming out, because that's when that documentary was dropped, just in time for the Harvey arraignment. You had Ava DuVernay signal boosting this garbage. Wasn't asking any questions. She was not signal boosting anything that would actually support Michael Jackson. She was not doing any of that. Instead, it was, nope, we're here to get the word out that Michael Jackson is he's a pedophile and you can't change my mind. Well, why would you try? Her mind, such as it is, was nailed shut from birth. This is who Ava DuVernay is. If someone said, yeah, I've heard all the R. Kelly stories over the years, but I'm still a fan, do you think Agent DuVernay would let that slide? You think she wouldn't say that there's something wrong with that person? But when you tell her about her idol, Harvey Weinstein, she blocks you on Twitter. And by the way, there have been many instances. A lot of people have talked about that. Whenever you confront her about Harvey Weinstein, she hits that block button. In fact, that seems to be her de facto position on anything. You ask her any questions, when you check her on something, she hits the block button. And this is the woman who, as Taj Jackson erroneously put it, she considers herself a champion for black rights. The white media might try to call her that, though no sensible person would. See, this is the Agent DuVernay that the white media is not going to tell you about. While they do their little gushing pieces in the white media about her, this is what they're not going to tell you about her. And this is what she doesn't want you to know about. She wants this to be forgotten. You know, ever since she did this tweet, though, she's been mentioned in a couple of pieces in the white media where she talks about Me Too. She's only mentioned Weinstein's name maybe once or twice, but usually she will mention it in conjunction with Donald Trump, usually as part of a litany. She never addresses Harvey Weinstein and his crimes directly. In fact, you take a look at what it is that she said since the Weinstein scandal broke, that is, and you find that she takes great care not to mention his name. Instead, she is very careful to limit her comments to only the most vague rhetoric about the need for inclusion and more women behind the camera and diversity and how, oh, change is good. In other words, the same sort of empty fluff talk that's meant to just waste people's time, just psychobabble. She damn sure doesn't talk about how she wants to see Harvey Weinstein spend the rest of his days in a cage. That she does not talk about. And it's obvious that she knows she has a huge liability when it comes to talking about Harvey Weinstein, so she's not mentioning his name. She talks around Weinstein. She talks about women and empowerment, but not about Harvey Weinstein. And it seems nobody in the white media wants to remind her of what she said the last time she mentioned his name. It also needs to be mentioned that Harvey Weinstein has also victimized black women too, though you wouldn't know it if you waited for either Agent DuVernay or KRS-Two to tell you. Lupita Nyong'o said that in 2011, a year before DuVernay's now infamous tweet, Lupita had met Weinstein while she was a student at Yale, and he offered to give her a massage. And he also invited her to have dinner at one of his infamous hotel room meetings. Nyong'o refused, and he became cold and hostile towards her. I told you about how British model actress Katie Noble told anyone who would listen that in 2014, Harvey Weinstein sexually assaulted her, forcing her to perform sex acts in front of a mirror. But what often doesn't get mentioned is that Miss Noble directly implicated Oprah Winfrey as being part of how Weinstein would zero in on his victims. You see, you don't hear much about that. You ain't going to hear Agent Duvernay talking about that. Not only does Duvernay not apologize for her reprehensible adoration for a man who she admits knowing is a sexual predator, she doesn't even have the decency to apologize to his victims. In fact, she's trying to slither away and hoping that no one reminds the public where she stands on Weinstein. When you look at her Twitter profile to see what she has to say about his conviction this week, nothing. She has nothing to say about him at all. She talks about a show that she's got on Oprah Winfrey's failing network and how she's in a spat with a couple of Bernie bros. And she congratulates her fellow black bootlicks at the NAACP Image Awards, but that's pretty much it. So Miss Super Feminist, who is all about girl power, and she loves Me Too so much, she has nothing to say about the single most notorious sexual predator of the 21st century. The poster boy for sexual predation in Hollywood gets convicted and she's got nothing to say. The biggest scandal in the history of Hollywood, one that affects women, and Agent Duvernay has no opinion on it, has nothing to say about it whatsoever. She has nothing to say about a man who she's a fan of. Oh, but she had plenty to say about Michael Jackson, though. See, if you're a fan of Michael Jackson, which Agent Duvernay tries to obliquely imply, she tries to imply that she doesn't have hostility towards the man. Oh, so you like Michael Jackson? Well, can't like him too much. If you're a fan of Michael Jackson, well, that doesn't mean that we don't criticize him, though. It doesn't mean that we don't believe lies, unsubstantiated lies from a couple of two obvious liars. That's not a problem. Oh, but Harvey Weinstein, we can't even say the name. I wouldn't want to even imply that he did something wrong. You know, Agent Duvernay's refusal to denounce Harvey Weinstein, it reminds me of when Oprah was interviewed about Weinstein right after the scandal broke in 2017. Oprah didn't condemn him either. She didn't say that she couldn't stand by him like she said about Michael Jackson. Oprah did everything she could to stay away from talking about Weinstein. Instead, just like Agent Duvernay, she used this flowery, vague, purple prose to talk about him. She's started doing this weird, obscene poetry where she would say, well, you know, I'm always trying to look for the rainbow in the cloud, whatever is the silver lining. Those are her exact words. She did an interview which reposted on The Hollywood Reporter. And those were her exact words. She didn't say anything about Harvey Weinstein. She wanted to change the subject to herself and her feelings. Sure, she'll talk about herself and her feelings. She'll talk about women. She'll talk about empowerment. She'll talk about the man on the moon. But what she's not talking about is Harvey Weinstein. Let's talk about my feelings. I try to look for the rainbow in the cloud, whatever is the silver lining. Gee, how come she didn't give that kind of consideration to Russell Simmons? She wasn't talking about any looking for the rainbow in the cloud for him. There was no talk about a silver lining for Russell Simmons. And Michael Jackson had two idiots who were clearly lying, making unfounded, demonstrably false accusations about him, total pure slander. As opposed to Harvey Weinstein, who has 100 women, literally 100 women, many of them big-name Hollywood actresses. These are not failures. These are not nobodies. These are not liars. These are some of the most accomplished women in cinema. And yet, what does Oprah Winfrey say? She doesn't say, well, hell, 100 of these women who I know well, big-name actresses, famous women who have no reason to lie. I can't stand by Harvey. Nope. What she says instead is, I try to look for the rainbow in the cloud, whatever is the silver lining. My, how very different she sounded when she talked about Michael Jackson. Do you see a pattern forming yet? When Gail Skank talked about admitted sexual predator Charlie Rose, Gail said that she still considers him a close friend and there's two sides to every story. This for a man who she sat next to while he was sexually abusing women, but she doesn't seem very bothered by that. Like Agent Duvernay can say in one sentence. Yeah, I've heard all the stories about Harvey Weinstein. Still a fan. This is the sociopathic mindset of Agent Duvernay, of the black bootlicks in general. You know, when you think about Agent Duvernay and Gail Skank and Orca Winfrey, we should call them the Harvey Weinstein fan club. There's an old saying that honor is what a man does when no one else is watching. Well, before 2017, no one knew what Harvey Weinstein was except for the people in Hollywood. Agent Duvernay certainly knew what he was before 2017. She admitted it. She knew all about it. But the public didn't know. There was no penalty for admitting that you knew Weinstein was a sexual predator in 2012. You could go ahead and say you didn't care and there was no penalty for it because it wasn't an issue at the time. Agent Duvernay said what she really thought about Weinstein in 2012. Everything else she said, nothing but lies and falsehoods. But what else would you expect from her? She told the world what she thought about his crimes. She said she didn't care. When no one was watching Agent Duvernay, she was only too glad to brag that she was a fan of the most notorious sexual predator in Hollywood, and she was snide and arrogant and dismissive of what he had done. I want you to understand that. She didn't just praise this animal, she acknowledged, yes, I know what he's done. I've heard all the stories. I don't deny that they're true. And I'm still a fan of his. Get over it. All that simply because he sat in for Piers Morgan one night. Now, if that's how overboard, how over the moon she gets for a sexual predator, merely because she's trying to curry his favor, and that's what it was about. In 2012, Agent Duvernay was clearly, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke aptly put it, on the take like a Saturday night harlot. For sale to the highest bidder, and she was hoping that old Harvey would put his bid in. Heck, you better believe she was sitting there probably thinking, what do I have to do to get invited to one of those hotel room meetings with him? Whatever he wants, I'll do it. I'm open for anything. You know that Agent Duvernay would kill to have had one of those meetings with Harvey. That's what she was hoping for. That's what she was campaigning for. All she had to do was see a man who she knew to be a sexual predator on television, and she just goes crazy. Oh, I'm a fan of his. I would watch Piers Morgan's show if Harvey was hosting it. If that's what she does simply because this guy shows up for one night on television, what the hell do you think she would do, or what do you suspect she has done for a white media mogul who gives her a 7-figure studio deal? What do you think she'd do for that? What she would do is she would slander black men full time. She would cover for these sexual predators. Whatever white media mogul has gotten his butt in a crack or needs to find a way to change the headline and get the heat off of himself, Agent Duvernay would be a happy, willing tool to run interference for whatever white media mogul is under the threat of possibly having to face consequences for his behavior. That's what she would do if they go ahead and slice her off a little bit of a check. Give her a check and she'll go ahead and do whatever Zaddy wants. She would gladly hand over as many black people as possible. That's okay. I'll help make sure that white immunity from law is maintained no matter what. Agent Duvernay has shown us what her honor is, and she has none. But at least she's got enough sense to lay low and to keep her mouth shut, especially at a time like this. KRS-Two, on the other hand, well, there's no accounting for brains. You better not tell her to demand punishment from Massa. She tries to hide her bullcrap talking points that she's only interested in protecting black women and girls. That's what she's about. I'm standing up for black women and girls. Well, when people are telling her, why aren't you talking about Harvey Weinstein? Why is it my job to go after white men? I'm protecting black women and girls. Well, last time I checked, Lupita Nyong'o's a black woman. Kadena Noble's a black woman. And they're certainly victims of Harvey Weinstein. But KRS-Two wasn't standing up for them. See, her interest in standing up for black women and girls begins and ends with the color of their assailant. Before Tarana Burke can get a full head of steam about some alleged sexual predator, first she's got to see what color they are. If they're black, oh, we definitely got to say something about this. Well, what if it's Harvey Weinstein? What if it's a black woman attacked by Harvey Weinstein? Well, why do you think it's my job to go after him? I'm protecting black women and girls, but not Lupita Nyong'o, and not Kadena Noble, and not any other black women that Harvey Weinstein's violated. They're on their own. Early last year, she was getting called out for this. And that was her little favorite talking point. Why do you think it's my job to go after black men? You have people checking her on that. Telling her, hey, all you seem to be doing is trying to get attention off of these guys. We know the black men who are accused of sexual predation, they're going to prison. That's baked into the cake. So it takes no courage and no brains, and it takes absolutely no bravery and no integrity to point the dirty end of the stick at R. Kelly. You already know that 90% of getting a black man locked up for a crime is merely accusing him. So it's not as if she's fighting against some juggernaut. She's going after the easiest targets in the society. The guys who get locked up whether they did the crime or not. And she's trying to act as if, oh, I'm standing up to a juggernaut. I'm taking on Goliath. These guys never get punished. That's the way that she was trying to portray it. Well, black guys get away with everything. They never get punished. These black guys never get punished. The first them hashtag was all over her behind. And what was it that KRS-Two said? She didn't say, well, you know what? Nobody should be allowed to get away with sexual predation. Instead, what she said was, it's survivors first and black women always. Notice how she put black women second. She made sure that, oh, sure, I'll go ahead and mention black women, but they're going to have to take a back seat to just survivors first. But she did manage to say one thing that was accurate in spite of herself. I got time today and a long leash. Finally, she acknowledges that she would be better off in a kennel than on the streets. I can certainly agree with that. You can all catch this smoke. Really? Now, she didn't talk that way about Harvey Weinstein. She didn't talk that way about Kevin Spacey. She didn't talk that way about any of the white sexual predators in the media. But you got people who are saying to her, hey, why is it that you seem to only be interested in the very people who you know damn well are going to prison simply with an accusation? Meanwhile, you got people like Lupita Nyong'o and Kadena Noble. They are being violated, and the guy who did it, you are completely and thoroughly uninterested in him. And she says, yo, you can all catch this smoke. See the pattern that's forming here? You talk about destroying black men and using them as a proxy because they know what the hell they're doing. Agent Duvernay and KRS-Two, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what agenda they're helping to promote. So you talk about destroying black men, well, they'll argue with you about that all day. The second that you say, what about Zaddy over here? Don't you think we should stop him from attacking black women? I'll block you. You can all catch this smoke. Notice that knee-jerk reaction? Oh yeah, these freaking shea butter bootlicks, they are the fiercest defenders of Zaddy. You see, in the case of KRS-Two, it becomes particularly venal and corrupt and pathetic. Because as she sees it, she's a celebrity now. At least that's how she views herself. This is the first time in her life, I guess, when people haven't been ridiculing her about her looks. She thinks she's important. The white media told her so. To her, this is a come up. This is her come up. She's depending on Weinstein's other white media pals to give her some more attention to help keep her relevant because this is the only way that she's going to be getting anything now. Now, I'm not going to get too personal, or more personal than I already have, I suppose, but let's be honest. KRS-Two is no ravishing beauty. Yet she's been on a couple of magazine covers, but that's so they could pivot from her to whatever white feminist they really want to make into the face of the movement. No pun intended. She got to be on stage with a C-list actress from the 1990s, and she's done a couple of network interviews. Now, as she sees it, she's gorgeous. Not because she's changed in appearance, but because the white media has made her gorgeous. Because if the white media gives you attention, well, that validates that you're prettier than average. She's a pretty woman, or at the very least, the white media gets to bask in the glow of the white media, and that just upgrades her looks simply because. She thinks she's some kind of sex symbol, in her imagination anyway. It doesn't take much to see she's been told her entire life about her nose and her acne scars and her physical composition. As she sees it, the white media putting her on a cover or giving any kind of attention to her, that confers instant desirability. In a society that values fame as currency, hey, she's getting talked about. In terms of social capital, she thinks she's a millionaire. Even the people who the white media lampoons and ridicules, they still get taken more seriously. At the very least, they get more consideration than the average female on the street. White media attention means that you're a somebody. At least that's her thought process. The white media made her something that she could never make herself. And that is something above just a ridiculed, shunned laughingstock. But she doesn't want black men to validate her. She wants Zaddy to validate her. But I guess she was kind of disappointed that all she could get was some black dude. See, there's plenty of white guys out there who, just for attention, would gladly take a prank photo with her. White supremacists love jokes like that. But none of them are actually going to want to be seen with her on their arm. But KRS-Two's got smoke for all those first them people, but she's got no smoke for white sexual predators. Certainly none for Weinstein. She tries to take credit for a verdict that she did absolutely nothing to promote. The black media were the ones who kept demanding that Tarana Burke speak out against Weinstein, and she was the one who time after time after time after time refused to. Tarana Burke and Me Too had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Weinstein's minor conviction. It was the black media and black people online who kept throwing Weinstein's name in her face, and she kept dodging and deflecting it. It was black people online who demanded that she take sides against him, and instead of attacking Weinstein, she instead attacked black people. Now, though, that she sees a chance to get some more attention for herself from the white media, here she comes acting like she was calling Weinstein out the whole time. Now, all of a sudden, she wants to rewrite history and she was leading the charge. She's been hiding from Weinstein, hiding from the mention of his name for almost 2 years now, and all of a sudden, now she wants people to think that she had something to do with it. You had some of the shea butter bootlicks slither their way into my comments section and ask, why are you talking about Agent Duvernay and KRS-Two? Now, these trolls know exactly what the reason is, but their problem is that we're making it harder for them to get a zaddy. They're looking at KRS-Two and Agent Duvernay and they're thinking, hey, this is the way to get Zaddy to give me some butter biscuits. Hey, this is an expedient route to a come up. You can't delegitimize this. You can't get black folks to rail against this. You can't devalue my quick and easy road to a come up. Let's be honest here, family. Black people for hundreds of years have known exactly how to suck up to white power. When black folks want some butter biscuits, we know exactly what it is that the dominant society wants to see us do. So when the Shea Butter crowd sees KRS-Two and Agent Duvernay, they don't see a couple of sellouts and traitors. They see a possible career path for themselves, and they think that we're ruining it for them. The white media has tried to deflect attention from the real super predators, the real sexual predators, and instead invent the lie that black men are the face of sexual predation, when they are not. The problem, though, is in order to sell a lie that big, in order to sell a lie that blatantly false, you first have to get a black person to sell it for you. Time's Up was not created by black women. Time's Up is not funded by black women. Time's Up is not run by black women and doesn't give a damn about black women. So why then does Time's Up use the images of black women all over their social media? If you didn't know better, you'd swear that Time's Up was a black female organization. But they're not. As I've detailed for you, Time's Up was created and bankrolled primarily by white men. So why are they putting images of black women all over there? Why are they plastering the pictures of black women all over and trying to make it where you see black women every time you think that Time's Up is mentioned on social media? It's because they're using black women as a smokescreen to hide behind. Their agenda is to get the attention off of the white sexual predators, and it's a matter of we're going to start a non-stop anti-black defamation campaign against any black celebrity who we can get an accusation against. Time's Up's entire MO is to be a professional, full-time, anti-black cheerleading squad. If somebody mentions Weinstein, they're going to mention Cosby. Yeah, Cosby's in jail, but mention him again. Somebody mentions Weinstein, bring up Michael Jackson. Somebody mentions Weinstein, bring up R. Kelly, Tavis Smiley, Russell Simmons, whomever. But you don't bring up a white man's name. We're not here to put white men in prison. We're trying to get the attention off of the white men so the white guys don't have to go to prison. They understand that they got to get some black female, though, to be the thin end of the wedge. So a black woman goes out there to be the point person for this defamation campaign, this distraction campaign. And that black person, they'll let her get out there first. They'll let an Agent Duvernay or a KRS-Two get out there at first to go ahead and break the ice. But once they've gone ahead and done that, then the white media comes in with their big resources. And after that, they're going to have some white feminists out there. Once they get some KRS-Two or Agent Duvernay or Gail Skank to go into phony histrionics about how black men never get punished, the white media will then bring in the Rose McGowans and the Mira Sorvinos and other white feminists who will signal boost this, and from there it becomes a nothing but this man, black man over here, he was accused of this, and this black man was accused of that. The white media doesn't give a damn what R. Kelly allegedly did. Agent Duvernay didn't give a damn about the black women who Weinstein had violated. Hell, that wasn't about to stop her from being a fan of his. And by calling out these willing agents of white supremacy, we make it that much more difficult for white supremacy's little playbook to be played out. We make it harder for them to operate business as usual because we're telling people what it is that they're seeing. We're delegitimizing white supremacy's puppets, and we're delegitimizing white supremacy's tactics and strategies. And that's the problem that some of these commenters have. Some of these people who are butthurt about pointing out what people like Agent Duvernay and KRS-Two are doing. When we point this out, that's their real problem, because these are aspiring bootlicks. They feel threatened. Although Weinstein dodged the heavy charges, the point is that for 2 years the black media was on Weinstein's case. It damn sure wasn't KRS-Two. It damn sure wasn't Agent Duvernay. It wasn't Orca Winfrey. And it certainly wasn't Me Too. All these tools we're trying to do is to change the subject. Anytime you brought up Weinstein, KRS-Two wants to change the subject. You bring up Weinstein, Agent Duvernay blocks you, or she ain't going to talk about it altogether. But the point is, neither one of them were willing to tackle Weinstein. And that was also part of the white media's would-be strategy. If people keep talking about Weinstein and keep bringing it up, people are going to remember it. They're keeping it in the public consciousness. We need it to die down a little bit. For God's sake, these black media types, they keep bringing it up every time somebody tries to smear a black man. Every time somebody tries to scapegoat black men and distract attention to black men, they bring up Weinstein's name. We need a black man to be the face of sexual predation. Oh, we thought we were going to make Michael Jackson into the face of sexual predation in America. We thought we were going to make Bill Cosby into it. And man, they put the heat right back on that white guy, Harvey Weinstein. They put the heat right back on a white face again. None of these phony feminists should be allowed to perpetrate the fraud that they had anything to do with Weinstein's conviction. They were the main ones trying to distract attention from him or refusing to talk about him altogether in the hopes that the heat would die down. All we have to do is bring up their Twitter tweets, and that's the end of that lie. So remember KRS-Two and Agent Duvernay. Remember that the same woman who was telling black women that she had smoke for them, she had nothing for Harvey Weinstein. Remember that the same person who told you that their top priority was protecting black women and girls, that's also the same woman who refused to say a word on behalf of the black women who Harvey Weinstein had victimized. I want you to remember the moral frauds like Agent Duvernay, who happily bragged that she knew all the Weinstein stories. And this years before the scandal broke. She was one of the people watching this guy do this stuff, hearing about it and going, well, hey, don't matter to me. Is he going to cut me a check? Can I get a deal with Miramax? Hey, the Weinstein Company, do you need a director? I'm available. And yeah, I'll come up to Harvey's hotel room for one of his meetings. Oh, sure, I'll be, don't worry, I'll be sure to bring my knee pad with me. You see, in 2012, there were still no consequences for overlooking Harvey Weinstein's crimes. And what did Agent Duvernay say about Weinstein's perversions? She's still a fan. How do you guarantee that you win a war? By controlling both sides. And when white supremacy is waging war against black people, they must control the individuals who claim to be the opposition. This way, no matter what choice or what side the society takes on a particular issue, it will always be the wrong side. White power, first of all, sets up a phony baloney opposition, a phony baloney choice for the society to take the side of. They use their media to legitimize whatever their chosen tool is by making the tool prominent. And then have these tools steer the social conversation away from white supremacy and onto preferably whatever group in the society can challenge the status quo. That's black people. See, R. Kelly was never the target of KRS-Two or Agent Duvernay or any of the other fakers, frauds, fools, and phonies. R. Kelly was never their target. Trying to get R. Kelly was not the objective. And neither was Weinstein for us. You see, black men in general, they were the real targets for white supremacy. KRS-Two and Agent Duvernay were simply tools being used for that purpose, promoting that goal, that we're gonna turbocharge the attacks on black men, and the nice ancillary side effect will be we won't be talking about these white sexual predators anymore. But what they didn't count on was that white supremacy, along with its bootlicks, was the target of the black media. Harvey Weinstein was simply a proxy for white supremacy and its black bootlicks. See, we're playing the game along white supremacy's rules and beating them at their own game. So go ahead and take a look, family. These are the people who want you to believe that they brought down Weinstein. That's the lying narrative that the white media is trying to push. These are the people who want you to believe that they were fighting against Harvey Weinstein and the rest of his ilk. Agent Duvernay is fighting against sexual predators because she wants to go after R. Kelly, but she praised and gushed over the most notorious sexual predator of the 21st century, and she admitted that she knew what he was. You know, it's like Noam Chomsky said, The most sophisticated form of propaganda is when something presents itself as opposition, when in reality it's actually support.